Losing my mind, I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. Falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away. I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. Falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. Falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind. I'm falling away, I can't see straight. I'm losing my mind, losing my mind.
Welcome to Brute Facts. So it's been kind of a odd day. I had Alex Malpass lined up, and he had something that come up at the last minute, but we're going to get him rescheduled. But I have just as good a guest, probably in some of the ladies' eyes that are here, a better guest. I don't know. I am honored to have Scott Clifton on. Yes, we know he's a daytime movie star and all that, but he likes philosophy, and that's what's cool about him. So hang out, and I will bring Scott on after the introduction gets done. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Welcome to the Brute Facts Podcast with your host and everybody's favorite Christian, Eddie Kroom. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for future content.
Hello, Mr. Scott Clifton.
Hey, how are you, Eddie? Man, what a great intro you have. I always wanted to be a voiceover actor, and so I'm like hypersensitive to like really good voiceovers, and that welcome to the Brute Facts Podcast. I like that a lot. That's cool.
You need to check out Pasta Mike over at Normalizing Atheism. He's the one that did that. He did the video, the voiceover, and everything.
No kidding. That's really cool. Yeah, I got to check that out.
Such a sexy voice. I told him if I could date his voice, I'd date his voice.
I know. So would I, man. So would I.
Oh, so how are you?
I'm good, man. One correction: I am definitely not a better guest than Malpass. I'm sort of like the B rating stand-in for him today, but I'm happy to play that role.
Well, to each their own. I think Malpass would argue a little bit with some other parts of your career. So, It's so not fair, man. You got the acting job, you're good looking, and you do philosophy. What?
Yeah, well, thanks. The good looking thing. That's just having a really terrible lifestyle where all I do is eat cardboard and like run, so like that's not, the philosophy stuff. I mean, I'm just always kind of liked it. So it's nice. I mean, a soap opera, you're playing the same character, you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, day in, day out. I mean, and it's I'm on contract, so it's just like that's my life for years, you know. But to get to like kind of escape from that and have something else that I'm passionate about is really nice, and it keeps me sane. So
awesome. So what was so being in acting? How long have you been in acting?
I've been a working actor since I was around 18. I think I got my first job on a soap opera just after I turned 18 years old, and I've been pretty steadily employed in that world, a few different shows, but I've been in that world ever since. And that's been coming on 20 years. I'm going to be 38 soon. Yeah. So that's just been my job for the longest time. I wanted to be, I started like auditioning as a kid. You know, I asked my parents if I could like try acting. Neither of my parents were actors or had any familiarity with that world. But I really I was interested in it, and, you know, bless their hearts, they were able to, you know, schlep me all over town and take me to auditions and stuff, even as like a 9-10-year-old. And so, yeah, just like lots and lots of rejection from about 9 years old up until 18. And then I started working. I mean, little jobs here and there, but you don't choose, you know, soap operas. Like, it's not, a lot of people are like, so why did you decide to get into soap operas?
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, it was just work. You know, you take the work that you can get. And I've been really, really, really lucky to have the longevity I've had in terms of a career. So yeah,
awesome. So where did philosophy come in? When did you have time to just bang your head against the wall?
Yeah, that's kind of that. So I'm not, my parents were philosophical people, but they weren't religious people. And most of the time growing up, there were like books around the house centered around Eastern philosophy, like a lot of Buddhism and Zen and stuff like that. Alan Watts and D.T. Suzuki, and so I kind of had, I had a sense of thinking philosophically, but that's so different from Western philosophy, which is kind of like what I'm into now. The switch happened. What made me start getting interested was when I was around 9 years old. This is a funny story, I guess. When I was around 9 years old in Southern California, there was a really, really major earthquake, like a 6-point-something earthquake. It's called the Northridge quake. And a lot of homes were destroyed. And we lived in like a tiny, tiny little house in the San Fernando Valley. And our house just kind of went like it almost collapsed. And so we had to move. And that was, you know, that's like, we had been living in, as I said, the San Fernando Valley, which is like, you know, typical sort of godless liberal bastion of democratic politics, you know. But there, you know, in Southern California, there are sort of pockets of conservatism and religiosity. And we ended up moving to this town that was, you know, mostly evangelical Christian demographic. And I had not thought that much about religion. I think the idea I had in my head about things like God and heaven was similar to the way I thought about Santa Claus. Like it's something, and I don't mean that to like denigrate it, but that was just the idea I had in my head. Like, oh yeah, this is something that, you know, parents kind of teach their children to keep them in line, and then you grow up and you grow out of it. And then we moved to this town, and I realized, oh no, these people, this is like their identity. Like they take this really, really seriously. And suddenly, you know, I had a choice: either become like socially ostracized at my new school, or kind of agree to being a kind of practice dummy for apologetics and evangelism. And, you know, all my friends and their parents were handing me, you know, the Case for Christ and Evidence That Demands a Verdict, and you know, lots of Bibles. I got lots of Bibles, but I mean, the fun part was I did start going to church and with my friends, and I wasn't. It's not that I was persuaded by any of it, but it became a kind of social outlet for me, and so I started learning what the Bible said and started reading it a little bit on my own, and having pretty good conversations. I mean, really, I was so out of my depth. I mean, these these kids, teenagers, were like being kind of trained in apologetics. That was the culture, right? So they were like making these arguments that I had no answers for. Most of them were young Earth creationists. So a lot of questions about evolution. How do you explain this? How do you explain that? But just having those, sort of being pressured in that way and just not having any answers to these questions was frustrating for me. And I think it started the trajectory of being interested at first in philosophy of religion, clearly, and then that just sort of broadened to philosophy in general. And that, yeah, I think that's what manufactured my interest in it.
It's so when you were all I could think of when you were talking about more conservative evangelical, I just wanted to say that's what they call the Valley. That's it's I've worked all over California, and there is a night and day difference between the coast and the Valley,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's See, I was one of the. I didn't even know what apologetics were. We stopped going to, or I stopped attending church before I became a teenager. But I look back now and I see that they were kind of priming us for this evangelizing and going out and talking about God and all these things. But there was no apologetics, and I think that was the worst part.
Huh.
Was they didn't teach you to defend anything, other than tell them about God and what He's done. But they were young Earth creationists, and just I love my
Right.
young Earth creationist friends. I just
The look on your face
I
right
just well, I spent because I kind of ended up, when I went through the deconstruction, I started kind of rebuffed that particular kind of Christianity. And man, I would argue tooth and nail with young Earth creationist, biblical literalist, and I just got to a point I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how the conversations that might have been interesting to you 10 years ago, I just stopped. Like there was a certain point where I looked back and I went, wow, I haven't like argued about evolution in 10 years, and I have no interest in it now. And if I ran into somebody who was skeptical of evolution, I don't even know if I'd have the energy to try to like persuade them of it. It's just not, it just stops being interesting. It's fun. Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't even go there anymore with other Christians that think that, because inevitably it's there's nothing wrong with evolution in Scripture, but there is with evolution and certain interpretations of Scripture.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and then a lot of them are skeptical of scientists and the science, and I'm like, I can't do it. I just if you don't take evolution, fine. Just
Yeah.
So to leave that on a nice tone, I have learned in philosophy not to be too confident, because I've been wrong so many times. So
Yeah, me too, man. That's how you get better, though, right? You just get your ass handed to you and you walk away
yes,
with your tail between your legs, and then you have to figure out, okay, either either I was wrong, or I have to find a better answer, to the argument that I couldn't answer, and so one of those two, you're gonna get shaped by it either way. By the way, I have a mouth like a sailor, so I'm happy to like lock it up for this conversation. I already cursed
yeah,
once, so
no,
I'm sorry.
yeah, that's we don't give a damn. I
All
don't care.
right,
Yeah,
you're my people.
yeah, that's we don't. I'm not a legalist at all. Yeah, in fact, I have a debate coming up with a Christian about, and it's not one I really cared to have, but that whole words have this inherent evil, and it's just
Oh,
ignorant.
wow.
So yeah, no, you fire away, homie.
All right.
I've had, if you've seen some of the guests I had on to begin my show, it's like I'm having to put, when I put it on the podcast platform, mature audience only. Mature audience only. Yeah,
Nice.
no, it's don't change anything for the show. I've got my audience is very diverse. I have a lot of atheist friends. Most of my Christian friends are they don't care either. So
Cool.
There's a few of us out there. We're trying to change the perspective.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
So what was the first debate that you had? Not formal, but like first really just firing debate in philosophy of religion. Do you remember having?
Well, I mean, it depends on what counts, right? So it started with, I mean, I'm talking about like, I'm 10 years old, right? And so I went on a camping trip with my best friend at the time, and his family were all, evangelical Christians. And, it was just like 10 adults, like sort of descending upon me about evolution. And that was the first, how come there are still monkeys if we came from monkeys, those kind of things. So I don't know if you consider that a debate, but those were the kinds of moments that triggered things for me. Some of my real, like where I went in prepared for like an argument, those moments are pretty embarrassing in retrospect. I remember after maybe a year or two of this, I started like reading things on the internet and reading the Bible and like making little notes in the Bible, like I was like stocking up ammunition, and eventually the pastor at the church invited me to have a sit down with him, and I came with like notes of like Bible contradictions, and I was like, I'm going to show him that there's contradictions in the Bible. And it was so silly of me. I mean, I was a very like, there are people like this now, I just like kind of like shake my head like, oh man, that's not productive at all. But and this pastor who is kind of a dick, but he rightly said, like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? Like, what? Come on. Like, this is not you. Well, you think like, oh, I'm going to give you an answer and then you're going to change your mind, or like, you're going to change my mind. Like, none of that's going to happen. This is about faith and you're barking up the wrong tree. And it kind of schooled me. And I was like, wow, yeah, okay. All right. So don't do that again, but just a lot of like really painful moments like that. My first debate, God, that's a good question. Like maybe an internet debate or something like that, where I don't know. That's a really great question. I mean, I started a YouTube channel, right? And this is sometime probably in my late teens, early 20s, when YouTube was like just starting and it was really exciting. And it was, remember they had the, I don't know if you recall this, they had the video response feature, where you could actually just click on a video and like the camera would pop on and you could just like record a video response to that video. And there was a lot of that going on. And so I don't know if you consider that like a debate, because it wasn't necessarily live, but that was where I kind of got my feet wet. Feet wet, beak wet. What's the idiom there? I don't know what the expression is. I think I used that wrong.
Yeah.
I guess. But it was like exchanges like that, where somebody would make a video and I would like respond to the argument that they made in that video, and then they would respond to me, and that was a really fun and exciting time. Even though, again, I embarrassed myself quite a bit, but I have a rule that I've never gone back and deleted any of my old YouTube videos, even though I disagree with most of what I used to say then, just because I kind of want to prove that I've grown, and that the change is possible, and I also don't want to sweep my mistakes under the rug, in case other people happen to make those same mistakes. So I know there's you could argue both ways on that, but yeah, it's fun and painful to look back on some of those videos and see the kinds of things I was saying then.
Yeah, that's very respectable, because God knows there's many that luckily I got into YouTube after being in philosophy and having my ass handed to me enough times that there's not a whole lot of tape there to for people to go back and see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's oh man. Now my TikTok. I left up everything there, but I just got on TikTok a year and a half ago, maybe.
Oh man, yeah.
And I'm already burnt out on it.
I never got into the TikTok thing. I think maybe I dodged a bullet there.
Don't. It's TikTok and Twitter are the two worst places in the world to get involved. It just sucks you in. It's not even worth it.
Well, Twitter, you sort of curate your own experience, really. I mean, it depends on what your circle is that you've defined for yourself on Twitter. And so my Twitter experience has gotten better and better. The sort of smaller the circle of people I'm willing to talk to gets, and the quality of discussion just goes up. And you also learn to cut your losses when conversations are going poorly, or you recognize that somebody's operating in bad faith. And that's a skill that that a lot of people have that I didn't for a long time. You want to just, even though somebody's clearly not, listening to you or mischaracterizing your view or whatever, like you just have to respond again. You have to prove them wrong. And that's hard to let go of. I know for myself and for a lot of people.
Yeah, it comes with maturity for sure.
Yeah.
It's I'm a type A kind of guy. I'm, if I think I'm right, I'm going to argue and argue and argue and argue. And it took a long time for me to say, okay, I'm done. You can have the last word. And
Yeah.
that has become, now I still like am sitting back there like biting my lip wanting to say something, but that's become more of a like a cutoff for me. It's like when I finally say that I'm going to stick to my word. So it's like, okay, I've had enough. No sense in keep going. You can have the last word. And inevitably, they go on for 6 more paragraphs and misrepresent you as much as they can. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
do it.
Must resist. I've even found that I don't really, unless I'm going to a space, which could be a space on the internet or something like this, or where it's expected that I'm gonna be either arguing for my own views, or making some kind of case, or you're discussing some kind of argument or something like that. Unless I'm like in a context where that's expected, I found I'm less and less interested in starting debates with people like in real life. Whereas I used to, my wife and I just went like 2 nights ago on a double date with another couple, and the gentleman that we were on the date with, at one point, he said, "I don't have enough faith to be an atheist." And I mean, like 10 years ago, man, I would have been like, "Oh yeah, define faith." Well, what do you mean? Like, and I just kind of went like, "Okay, Frank Turek, whatever you say, man," and
That's
just sort of let it go. But it's interesting how uninterested I was in biting that bait. And I don't know. I suppose that's a sign of either maturity or just fatigue.
yeah. You know what? It's hard to tell sometimes.
I think maybe they're actually the same thing.
Yeah. Well, you're not quite as old as I am, so it's when the closer you get there, you'll be like, it's not worth the energy.
Yeah.
I want to drink a beer later and watch a game and not think about this guy over here. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I could have bit my tongue on that one, because I'm kind of like uh, I don't really debate atheists a lot, because I'm more of those that are representing what I claim to represent, and when they go out and say stupid things and make dumb arguments or stuff like that, I'm like, hold on, let's take a step back, let's look, and I'm not a jerk about it. I try to do it in a nice way, but it almost always comes back to, you deny God's word. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
whatever, man.
that's funny too. It's like, yeah, I'll still, probably the majority of my disagreements that I have publicly are with theists of some kind or another. But what's interesting is I've found that I'm more triggered by my disagreements with other atheists, right? Like those are the disagreements that stick with me and nag at me and bother me, and I get angry in my disagreements with other atheists, whereas I don't get angry, at a theist. I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's protecting the in group, some kind of cognitive bias or something. I don't know.
I think with me it's seeing my old arrogant self and some of those that are coming up, and it's like I was so hard-headed and it took me so long to kind of change a bit. I try to be patient with those kind, but they seem to be the ones that just really get me,
Yeah.
get me going. So
I think that's probably, yeah, I think when you recognize your former self in an interlocutor and what you recognize embarrassed you at the
yeah.
time, you know, then maybe that'll do it. Maybe that's all it takes.
So who would your favorite theist philosopher be? Or if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, I got plenty. I mean, I really enjoy Josh Rasmussen.
Oh
I
yes.
really enjoy Dustin Crummett. Am I pronouncing? Is it Crummett
Yes,
or
Kermit,
Crummett?
yeah, yeah.
Crummett.
Kermit.
Uh, I like. Uh, I really think Richard Swinburne is brilliant and interesting and compelling. Uh, but and then there are just guys I know that are not even professional philosophers where I just really like, you know,
Yeah.
theists, you know, obviously, where I just happen to like how they think. And like, I have a friend named Aaron that is he actually teaches philosophy now, but he's Christian theist. And I just think he's I think the most charitable person I've ever had a dialogue with. Every time I have a conversation with him, I feel safe. I feel like I know that I'm not going to be misrepresented. I feel like he's going to offer the best that his side has to offer, and it just makes it so much more enjoyable and comfortable and fun. So yeah, there's a lot of people like that. I would probably say that about Josh Rasmussen as well. I mean, just he's a kind of dialectical genius, right? I mean, his expertise is in philosophy, but it's also kind of in he has an expertise in conversation. And
Yes.
I think that shows in every interaction that he has.
Yes, for that very reason, that's why Rasmussen is always up there for me too. That's I love he, he's very intellectually modest.
Mhm.
Um, he actually entertains objections. He still mans people,
Mhm.
and he's so charitable. It's like I don't think I've ever heard anybody say they didn't like him, and if they did,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think there's something wrong with that person,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. If you don't like Josh Rasmussen, that says a
Yeah.
lot more about you than it does him.
I was surprised you said, Dustin. Dustin's a cool guy. I don't hear too many, theists or atheists, talk about, Dustin enough. He's also
Yeah.
another very little tidbit about Dustin. We're in a philosophy group on Facebook where I kind of really got deep into philosophy years ago, and I didn't know for years if he was a theist or an atheist. And I was like, I couldn't figure him out,
Yeah.
And then I saw some of his published work later on. I was like, oh, he's a theist. I would have thought he was an atheist, the way he
Yeah.
argues a lot. So
Yeah, he corrects me all the time on Twitter. Like, I'll say something and he'll be like, "Actually," uh, and I just have nothing to say in response. So, like, I hope he doesn't think that I'm ignoring him. It's just that I go, "Okay, yeah, okay. I got nothing to say to that. You're right."
it's
You know?
yeah, I had him on the show a while back. He was one of the first handful of guests
Oh,
that I
cool.
had. Yeah, he's a real cool cat. So
I had a
uh,
debate with him, you know, a discussion debate with him about his argument from moral knowledge, which is a really interesting argument. And I was barely familiar with it. I was like, you know, grotesquely underprepared for this conversation. And he was, of course, patient and courteous. And I think I walked away from that debate feeling like, oh yeah, I did a good job, you know. And then you start reading the comments, and everybody's like, wow, Dustin was so patient with this guy who has no fucking idea what he's talking about. Oh, that's so
yeah,
nice, you know.
that's
And I
yeah.
was going, wow, I guess I probably have some more thinking to do about this one.
Well, that's. I mean, you haven't studied philosophy, have you?
No, unfortunately, embarrassingly, I'm a high school dropout. I dropped out of school because I really wanted to be an actor. I just knew
So
I wasn't going to do
I'm
anything
a
else.
high school dropout too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Hey,
philosophy. Yeah, it was kind of a layman thing that I got into years ago. So I
no
think it's
kidding.
kind of a lay thing. We don't get that little foundation that's there, and we forget we don't realize all the little nuance and technicality. So that comes later after we embarrass ourselves.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I'm constantly paranoid and in fear that I'm like the quintessence of the Dunning-Kruger effect, you know?
it's
It's just like, "Oh god, I'm the guy that, doesn't know how much he doesn't know."
it's oh man, that's yeah, I've yeah, Dunning Kruger was I had actually been charged with that a couple of times, and I was like, "What is this they keep talking about?" And then when I finally looked at it, I was like,
Oh.
"Oh, wait a minute. Am I so lost I didn't know I was lost? I thought I was
Yeah.
really in the fight. No, I wasn't."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, I think before that phrase was even coined, you had, like 20 years ago, Donald Rumsfeld going, "There are known knowns, there are or there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns." And we all kind of went, "What an idiot," and then of course now we're all going like, "Oh yeah, I guess that's kind of
Yeah,
true."
there is. There really are no unknowns and yeah, that's yeah. It's yeah, they yeah, the political guys will find anything they can grab as to make it
Yeah, yeah.
sound cool.
Not
So
saying it can't be abused, but
right. So who's your favorite? Well, it's probably going to be hard, but I'm sure I got an idea who some of them are. Your atheist philosophers.
um I really to be I should preface that I'm not I'm just not well read. The truth is, I'm not. I couldn't tell you. Uh, like there's no philosopher that I'm like I'm familiar with like their entire body of work. Really, actually, the closest, interestingly, is probably William Lane Craig, which is kind of weird. But I really did. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I like thinking about philosophy, but I'm really bad. I mean, really, really, really bad at knowing like who said what and who's got what argument and what this philosophical tradition came from and how it started and what Hume said this and
Yeah.
I'm so undereducated when it comes to that stuff. And part of that has to do with just my brain. I'm sort of undisciplined and impatient and only care about what I care about and don't care about what I don't care about. Yeah. Right. But so obviously my answer here is going to be biased because the reason I like the philosophers that I do has to do with like just really specific narrow interests. But I think it's possible that my favorite philosopher is Wesley Morriston. I just I got to have a conversation with him recently in preparation for a sort of a live discussion I got to have with William Lane Craig, and I just yeah, this is total bias because I think I how he thinks resonates with me. How he reasons resonates with me. And I guess that's how it works, right? I mean, there's an author or a thinker, and they catch your interest because you align with them, but then you allow them to guide you to new thoughts that you didn't have. And Morrison was the one who did that for me. I mean, there's plenty of others,
Yeah.
but I feel the closest connection to Morrison. Obviously, I could easily say Oppie or Mackey, but that would just be like because those guys are almost universally recognized as being some of the best in their field. And
Yeah.
for me, I think it is Morrison.
That is so blasphemous. You did not put Oppie.
I know. I was supposed to say Oppie. Damn it.
That's right. I tell people all the time that Oppie and Malpass are the two saints of atheism. They are.
Yeah, Malpass is up there, man. He's
Yeah,
great.
they're just kind of like we were talking about with Shane. They're so charitable. They're
Yeah.
intellectually honest. They're intellectually humble.
And Malpass will he'll slum it too. Like Malpass will like have a whole debate with Matt Slick, who is not even like close to his level, but he'll still have those conversations. I can't imagine Graham Oppie doing that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I actually kind of got into a little conversation with Matt Slick the other night on
Oh yeah,
Clubhouse.
last night. This is last
No,
night.
a few nights ago.
Whoa, that's recent. I didn't even know he was doing
What?
much these days.
Yeah, he's on Clubhouse all the time, and
Huh.
yeah, I kind of hang out in a room with mostly atheists, because a lot of the Christian rooms on there are a bunch of fundamentalists and stuff like that, and I don't dig that. In fact, I quite often get called not a real Christian. And one of the things they say is, I mean, look who's agreeing with you. It's a room full of atheists. Look who your friends are. It's a room full of atheists. And I'm just like,
Wrong by association.
yeah, I was like, what was that whole thing Jesus did when
Right.
he was like, what was it the Pharisees that were like, hey,
I'm
look at
pretty
who you're
sure.
hanging?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't. Good thing they're not my judge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you have any particular arguments that you like entertaining, or
Yeah.
kicking
I
around
mean,
with, or
yeah. And by the way, I meant to say this at the beginning, but perhaps it's even more appropriate here. When you initially reached out to me and you sent me an email, and it was the sweetest, most complimentary email, and I still thank you for that. You said something to the effect that, trust me, when you come on, I don't expect me to, I'm not going to be challenging you or trying to debate you. This is your time. Um, and I do want to say, especially if we spend a little time talking about like philosophical arguments and stuff, I would actually prefer that you push back on me a little bit, because I think if you hear me say something that sounds wrong to you, one of two things is going on. Either I'm wrong, or I need to be saying more to justify whatever it is I'm claiming. Like I clearly haven't said enough, or said it the right way. And
Mhm.
so please, feel free to challenge me. That said, yeah, I don't know how this started, but somehow I'm the Kalam, William Lane Craig's Kalam cosmological argument is probably the one argument that I'm most familiar with. And I know, as you said, that that's like you have no interest in defending that argument, but I think a lot of atheists get that argument wrong, even though I don't think it's a necessarily good argument. I think it's not a bad argument for the reasons so many atheists think it is. It's special pleading. It's begging the question. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's not. Um, and I think it's an argument that sort of it erupts into a bunch of different really interesting subjects. Like it has to. Like you can't really do a deep dive into the Kalam cosmological argument without having to think about time and causation and personhood and consciousness, and like it like funnels into all these different subjects, which I think so. Maybe that's part of what got me from philosophy of religion into philosophy in general. Is it's possible that particular argument is what paved the way for that, because uh, it forced me to start thinking about all these other sort of ancillary subjects. So there's that one. I'm just familiar with it. But I also really like talking about morality, even though I recognize that I'm like really not competent in that area. Um, I'm interested in contingency arguments. I'm interested in ontological arguments. I think those are fun to think about and talk about. Yeah. Did I answer your question, or did I
Yeah,
just
yeah, you
waffle on
did.
like a
Yeah,
long?
no, that's no. That's yeah. So that was like the Kalam, like I was talking about. It's really Craig's in particular that I'm not a big fan of, where you goes from first stage to second stage,
Mhm.
because the first stage is, you're in metaphysics. The second stage, you're in physics. Now you got to prove the universe had some kind of beginning, and
Oh,
it takes on so much burden, when the original Kalam was only to show a first cause. That's it. Not even that
right.
it was God. It was just to get you to, that step.
Yeah. Well, that first stage, I mean, it depends on. I mean, there's a first and second premise in the first stage, and then there's a first and second stage, right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
two phase kind of argument. But the physics stuff is still in that first phase of the argument. It's in the second premise, right? So the first premise is the causal principle, and then the
yeah,
second
yeah.
premise
You're
is
right. Yeah, yeah.
the
You're right.
universe begin to exist. And that's true. I pretty much don't touch that second premise about the beginning of the universe. In fact, I always just grant it. I just go, okay, let's say I don't know if the second premise is true or not, but I'd always rather just concede that premise, because now we can start doing philosophy, right? So if
Yeah,
if you just grant that the universe had a beginning, now we can it allows us, it sort of corrals us into a conversation about causality and personhood, and which obviously ultimately leads you to that second phase of the argument, that if the universe does have a cause, what does that cause look like? What would it have to look like? um I do think that the fact that the Kalam argument, like, and it's not the only one, is structured that way, like as a, that there's a conclusion, like an actual logical conclusion, but then there's also a post credit scene, which is like, oh, and by the way, that cause is God. I think
mhm,
that's problematic. I don't think it needed ever to be structured in those two
right.
phases. I think you could build the fact that that causes God into a premise if you really wanted to. And so I think a lot of atheists feel like there's a switcheroo happening, or like a bit of a shell game, and that confusion is unnecessary. I think the apologist could have easily structured the argument to avoid that. I mean, there's so many atheists that just go, the Kalam argument doesn't even prove God. That's like, okay, I mean, clearly it does, or it's meant to. I mean, just because, yeah, it's so yeah. I think that there's a lot of unnecessary confusion around the phases of that argument.
Yeah, yeah. I
It
would agree
wastes
with
a
you.
lot of time.
Yeah, that's why I was interested in having. I was really looking forward to the Mount Pass show, because he's going to talk about the Kalam cosmological argument is kind of entered into a different arena, and that's proving causal finitism. And
Right.
Uh, Kuhns and Pruss both did papers on paradoxes like the Grim Reaper paradox, and well, Mount Pass is actually doing a response paper to it, and I was
Cool.
like, yeah, and I was like, rock on. I want to hear, what, because it seems, the paradoxes seem to be issues with, that shows causal finitism, but, there's great minds like him working on it. He might change my mind on it. So,
Yeah. I think, I mean, Malpass's argument for some of that is just that, well, yeah, of course it's a paradox, but it's the thought experiment proves that there's a paradox with the thought experiment. It doesn't prove that there's a paradox with the universe. And believe me, one of the reasons that at some point, I really should dive into that and really seek to understand the arguments for causal finitism, and what I think my response to it is, instead of just granting that.
mhm.
Um, but I don't know. I'm just so much more interested in like what a cause is, that I haven't devoted any time to that. I should.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting place to be with causes. Everybody seems to take cause or causality um, with a grain of salt, without really looking at, we never actually see this change, this cause and this effect. There's something we say is a cause, and then there's an effect, but where in between there does it go between becoming
Yeah.
a cause and effect? You know, it's so it's really interesting when you start really diving into causality itself, how much we take for
Yeah.
granted.
Yeah, and I think that first premise, whatever begins to exist has a cause, is like you said, it's I mean it's taken for granted by most people, and maybe the contrarian in me is what finds that so interesting, because it does seem like, I mean, even when somebody like Craig presents the argument, he'll go, okay, the first premise is whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now we know that's true, but here's the second premise that blah, 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 you know, and then I'm the guy going like, wait, let's talk about that first one for a second at least.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's funny because years ago I saw one of his response videos, and it was like, I expected to have a lot of pushback on premise 2, but it seems like a lot of people want to push back on premise 1, and that's surprising to me.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Well,
this is philosophy. What do you mean?
Yeah, actually, let me see. Do I have it right here? His there's a bookshelf behind the camera here, but
Oh, okay.
Craig's book, The Kalam Cosmological Argument, I bought it a while back, and I was surprised that like his defense, it's like a, I mean, 250, 300 page book, I think. But here it is. Yeah, right here. But you know, it was so surprising to me that his defense of the first premise is like 6 pages. That's it. It's like, you know, and you know, hundreds of pages for the other one, and then of course the second phase of the argument.
Yeah, it's same way in the Blackwell Companion to Natural
Yeah.
Theology. It's
Yeah.
it's like a small section for premise 1, and then the rest of it is premise 2, and it's like,
Yeah.
not everybody's willing to grant, you know, this idea. That's why I don't understand, as brilliant as he is, why he just wouldn't stick with like something like Aquinas's pure actus or something, because it doesn't matter if it's an eternal universe or the beginning of the universe. I think there's just so many burdens there that he's taking on, and that's why he's having so much. But I mean, we could go all the way back to Aristotle's unmoved mover. At least we're not talking about, you know, we just because there was an initial expansion. I mean, we don't know what was before that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that Craig won't make those arguments. He can and has, you know, and obviously he'll make the contingency argument, which sort of like circumvents all of that stuff. Which, and the contingency argument is a super interesting argument. I just think that, you know, it's his doctoral thesis was on the Kalam cosmological argument. I mean, the dude popularized the argument. So it's, you know, it's not surprising that he would, it's kind of his baby, you know, it's not surprising he would put a lot of his eggs in that basket.
Yeah, that's a good point. I really didn't take that into consideration. I guess if that's what your thesis is on, then you probably, well, I don't know. I had Graham Oppie was on my show and and I knew quite a bit about him. Like you, I kind of just bounce around. I can't really quote a lot. I mean, there's a lot of them I can't now, but for a long time, I just couldn't tell you what philosopher said what, who was working on. So
Right.
I knew a lot about Oppie from his videos and some of his papers and things. And so I was doing research on him, and his PhD was in language.
Oh yeah.
So I asked him about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's I just did that to get a PhD." That was it. He was like, "There was it." He's like, "Yeah, I don't know anything about that." That's and I was like,
sorry.
I'm like the notes here. Okay, let's move that page and that.
All right.
He just blew the show up from there. It was but I thought it's pretty.
That's a funny contrast between those two philosophers, actually. Like, you've got Craig, you know, Craig's built his career on his doctoral thesis, and Oppie's like, oh yeah, I just did that to like get in the door. Like, like I don't really care about that.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of gangster, you know. He's just like, yeah, man, I'm PhD shopping. I just wanted to get my PhD paid for, you know. And so that was pretty cool. But yeah, he's a trip like that. So yeah, I think I'm too familiar with Craig also.
It's
like
hard
you,
not to be. I mean, he's the guy that he's the gateway drug, right? I
yeah,
mean, he's the gateway drug to apologetics, and I don't even mean that in a bad way, but he introduced so many people,
hmm
atheists and theists alike, to a lot of these concepts, because he is a popularizer and he is a communicator at the end of the day. And I think he made this stuff accessible for a lot of people, and he deserves credit for that.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I often say that uh, Craig is a double-edged sword. He because he simplifies things so much for the layperson, but at the same time, there's so much technicality behind a lot of the things that he's arguing that when the layperson goes to argue it and don't know, these technicalities or stuff, they're just end up like me looking stupid. So
Yeah, but he made me look pretty stupid. I don't think I was being stupid, but he was certainly able to sort of weaponize my lack of terminology against me, right? Like, I didn't have the sort of philosophical vocabulary
yeah.
that I now have, but when I first started talking about this argument on YouTube, way back in the day, people sent him my YouTube videos, and he just like eviscerated me, like going, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He says this, but that's clearly not true." And at the time, I mean, he could have said, "Oh, it's pretty clear that what this guy is saying is this. Now let me respond to that." He just doesn't have the language for it, so let me give him the language and then sort of steel man. I mean, he Craig doesn't steel man a lot.
Mhm.
And I think he makes maybe a little too much of his academic and the academic credentials of others, which is unfortunate because it's a bit of a conversation stopper. So that's a totally legitimate criticism of him.
No, I agree completely. Honestly, I don't know if he's capable because I've heard him talk to. Trying to be a little bit charitable, I guess.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
because I've heard him talk to so many different people. Like even when he talks to like Oppie, I mean, Oppie doesn't spend a whole lot of time with the verbiage and
yeah.
all of that. It's and he kind of just pounds these technical terms and giant words and um
You know what the problem is? Craig spent way too much time in Germany. Actually, I mean, he speaks German. Like, I think he spent a lot of time over there. I
yeah.
just think yeah,
I think it's all the formal debates. He hadn't been able to turn that switch off.
yeah.
Just,
I think that's
I think that's what it
almost
is.
certainly true as well. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, the super sexy guy or super sexy voice guy actually just entered the chat. Normalizing
Hey, super sexy
atheism.
voice guy. Wait, where do I?
Yeah.
Oh, there's comments. I didn't even see that there were. Oh, look
Oh
at
yeah.
that. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, he popped in. He's the one from he did the intro and the voiceover, and he's the one with the magical voice.
Cool. Wow, some of these commenters have more information about me than I did. Like, one of Scott's first formal internet debates was against Matt Slick. Yeah, I think that's true.
Why?
I don't know, because I was
Yeah.
certainly at no higher a level than he is at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of engaging with Tag. Tag was a kind of interesting argument, at the time, and it was getting a lot of press. And so I sort of tackled that, and I had like, do you remember Stickum back in the day? It was like one of the first like video chat sites.
Oh no.
And I had a few like interactions with Slick on there. But I think that my first actual like formal debate, not formal, but like official debate with him was on morality, not Tag, which is, I don't know how that came about, but yeah, it's around. I think you can still YouTube it.
Ben Watkins.
Ben's here?
Yeah. Why are you both suppressing the truth and unrighteousness?
Because of Romans 1, man. Like, obviously.
Right. He does ask, what evidence could in principle change your mind?
Oh, that This question kills me. It really keeps me awake at night because I think my answer is so. I wish my answer were different. I wish I could identify something that would change my mind, and I don't think that I can. This- so this is the thing. I think theism is a totally a rational position to hold. I think theists can be completely rational. I think it's I grant all of these things, and yet I would be terrible at a devil's advocate debate. I've never wanted to, and that's like a kind of a cool thing now that a lot of people are engaging in, is like devil's advocate debates. But I also, my credence level, I guess is the right way to say it. My credence level in naturalism is like really, really high, like probably like way too high. But I don't, and this is not irrational. This is just a psychological fact about me. But I think even if I looked up in the sky and suddenly the clouds or the stars, reformulated to say Jesus is Lord or something like that, I would find it. I mean, I'm guessing, because I'm not in that situation, and I can only speculate about my own psychology, but I'm guessing that I would find it more likely that I'm living in a computer simulation than that that was done by God, which I don't say that proudly, but I think that's just a fact about me, and I don't know why that is.
Well, if I saw that, I'd probably go check myself into a mental hospital first.
Yeah, or that I'm just going crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
sure.
I am a very skeptical theist, so I totally understand what you're saying, and I think one of the best answers. By the way, thank you for that extremely honest answer. I think I keep going back to Oppie, but
Yeah.
I asked him about what the most convincing argument was for him, and his response was, "Well, it's kind of hard to say there's a convincing one when I haven't found any convincing."
Hmm.
And what would be convincing is like asking, you're asking me a question that I've never run across this, in the way that, whatever happens, like you were saying. I mean, if God showed up in my bedroom or something like that, I'm not going to think it's God. I'm going to think, that was some crazy crab I had or some clams or something. I just, and when people tell me about like visions, like of God or angels or things, I don't question anybody's first person experience. I'm not there. I don't know.
Right.
And I don't want to be proven wrong by one of them popping up in my bedroom in the
Right.
middle of the night and scaring the hell out of me. So
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, rock on.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think that everything I just admitted is still compatible with me being able to say that there are arguments that I don't have a good answer for. I mean,
Yeah.
um, teleological type arguments, fine tuning. I just have to admit, otherwise I'm lying,
Right.
that I don't understand the argument. It's above my head. I think that I know what I think is wrong with it, but I also know that if that were what was really wrong with it, much smarter people would have said that by now. And so I take it that the much smarter people not saying that are not saying that for a reason, because they know that there's a problem with my response to the argument. Um, I think I think consciousness is a problem for naturalists. It's soluble. I mean, I think it's possible to solve something like the hard problem of consciousness, but let's not pretend it's not a problem. Consciousness is predicted by theism. It's not at all predicted by naturalism. It's surprising on naturalism that there is like this subjective component to the universe. Why is that? Well, there's panpsychists have a really interesting answer to this. I don't know if panpsychism is true, but I think you could make an argument for at least a probabilistic argument for God's existence based on consciousness. So yeah, so even though my credence level is like through the roof, unjustifiably so maybe, I still recognize that there are arguments I don't have a good response for, and I can.
Yeah, great response, because I often tell people, these philosophical arguments that we kind of exercise with and things like that. To me, the one of the most compelling things would be consciousness. That would be one of and I don't necessarily have a syllogism for it. It's just getting immaterial from material, things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Especially if you think consciousness is something emergent. That's where you really get the problem. How does physical stuff, matter and energy, give rise to this subjective component? I mean, that is a problem. That's why I think that can't be the solution.
yeah,
It's called emergentism. Is that the idea of the
yeah,
conscious?
emergentism. Yeah,
Yeah. I don't think that's a plausible answer to the problem of consciousness.
yeah. I've looked into different theories of emergentism, and it just it's very lacking in my opinion. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the other ones is one that I typically don't argue about either, because I'm not even sure. I think Alexander First tried to or did an argument on it, which I didn't find very compelling when it was actually put in a syllogism. But it's the uh, the kind of creative, emotional creatures we are. The need to express ourselves, the need to feel like we got to find some kind of purpose. The arts, the music. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
beauty. Why do we find so many things beautiful? And all these different things. I mean, it could be a result of just evolution, but that doesn't seem to answer still why. Maybe it came about through evolution, but what benefit is there to thinking things are beautiful, or making music, or expressing ourselves?
Yeah, you just said something interesting that I've never thought about before. I do think I think arguments from beauty aren't that hard to figure out a solution to. Um, Once you realize that, my brain evolved to find the flowers pretty. The flowers didn't just happen to be, as pretty as it takes from my brain to, once you sort of swap the emphasis, I think you can get around those arguments. But maybe you could make an argument for God's existence from music. I mean, it is kind of, you just mentioned music, and I thought, well, why is it that why do we have, I mean, maybe there's somebody who's an expert in music theory that could just answer this like that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But it does seem surprising that music works so perfectly. That you have keys and octaves and scales, and certain notes fit into those keys and others don't, and the right combination of notes makes music, and the wrong combination of notes makes nonsense. And that, yeah, I've never thought much about that, but that's, has anybody made an argument from music?
I think there's well, I don't know about music, but like just objective beauty, but they kind of put all that together. Like
Right.
the music it kind of has this universal a thing about it that so many, even though people have different tastes of music, but there's
Well, that's the difference, right? Like,
right.
beauty can be subjective, but the fact that, A sharp isn't in the key of C or whatever, I don't know if that's true, that's objective, right? Like, beauty, whether that painting over there or that sunset is beautiful, I think you could just say, no, that is just purely subjective. But it's not purely subjective that when someone is singing out of key, right? I mean, they're singing the wrong key. And we all recognize it too, so which is, yeah, I think you could make an argument for that there is like objective music.
Yeah, objectively good music.
right. Or
So
at least, not, objectively in pitch.
So you guys heard it here. Scott Clifton is now a theist.
That's right.
From the
Right
Argument for
here.
Music.
And all this time, you know, you're the one who did it for me. Just by, I will not be sleeping tonight because of you. Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate that.
Oh man. Well, if you're any ADHD like I am, it's sleeping's hard anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I am, I think.
And I do want to be respectful for your time. Man, boy, that hour has flown by. That was fantastic, man.
Yeah,
I
sure
really,
has. I have until, I mean, my son is getting picked up from school right about now. So I assume he'll be home in 10 more minutes. I can hang out with you until I hear them, and then I'll go like, oh, okay, I should go because
okay. Yeah, rock on. Yeah, definitely.
cool.
So I guess the next one would be what music is objectively good to you?
You know, it's funny. I say that, you know, but I'm such an idiot when it comes to music. Like, not only do I not know, like, I don't think I know the lyrics, like the full set of lyrics to any song. Like, I don't know what songs are on what albums. I don't know what albums belong to what artists. I couldn't tell you the difference between the Yellow Submarine and the White Out. Like, I have no idea. Like that, and I don't. My taste in music is so dumbed down and simplistic. Like, I hear some like pop top 40 thing on the radio and I go, that was great, and that's you know what I listen to. It's really quite embarrassing.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's but you find some kind of way to remember all those lines.
Yeah. Oh, but the answer though is Huey Lewis and the News are objectively good music. So there you go.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, the lines thing, the you know, memorizing dialogue, I think that's just it's a trick. It seems more impressive than it is, because, well, for a bunch of reasons, but you know, you're not really memorizing. You're memorizing, like, you know, combinations of words, but you're not memorizing concepts, right? Like, so if I have a line that's like, I can't believe you cheated on me, I'm not memorizing that she cheated on me, right? Because I was there shooting the scene where I found her cheating on me, right? So it's there's already some information kind of built in, and also it's just the 10,000 hour rule. I mean, anything we memorize about 40 pages of dialogue a day, 30 to 40 pages of dialogue a day. And people think that's crazy, but it's not when you've been doing it for 20 years. It's like a learned kind of thing.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, see, like everybody thinks that's like super impressive, but
well, that's why you don't know any words to any songs.
Yeah,
you got all that part of your brain.
Yeah, the bandwidth is all used up. Although I think that there's I think that it's a different cognitive phenomenon. Like, memorization and recollection are two different things going on. Like, you know, but my ability to recall something is, well, bad. But to memorize is different. You're kind of like choosing to like input it. And also, anything I memorize, there's like a defense mechanism in my brain that I forget it the next day, because I have to make room for like the next thing that I memorize. So
wow.
Yeah.
Man. Well, I guess it's just training your brain is
yeah.
So you guys
like
do
a narrow skill set that's only useful for like this one thing.
Do they teach you any kind of like mnemonic devices or any kind of, do you go through that memorization kind of study on how to remember so many things easily? Or
no, I mean, it's not like everybody works differently, right? Like I learn my stuff either, I mean, at most the night before, usually the morning of, because it just works for me. Like I learn it that day and then I forget it at the end of that day, and that's how I do it. Sometimes, and also on soap operas, like things change last minute, like entire scenes are rewritten, and then you have 5 minutes to learn it, right? And so you kind of, for me, the easiest way to learn anything is to sit down with a scene partner and just read it with each other. I say my line, you say your line, and you do that a couple of times through and you've already got the rhythm of it. But different people work differently. One of my colleagues she memorizes the entire week worth of episodes. I mean, we're talking this adds up to 150 pages of dialogue or something like that. She memorizes the entire week, and has to, like, she can't just go day by day. Like, she memorizes the whole thing, and then when that week's over, she memorizes the next week, and so on and so forth. So she knew her lines 6 days ago, and I'm just learning them now. So
Wow.
everybody's different.
So I set you up for this.
Okay.
Now we're going to tie it back around. So what do you think about the accuracy of the oral tradition of
of
the
like
Bible?
Gospels and whatnot? I remember once when I had first read Misquoting Jesus, by Bart Ehrman. It was like one of his first books that kind of like put him on the, and made him like a thing. And I read that book, and I had a bunch of questions, and I emailed him these questions, and he told me to buy this book called Orality and Literacy by this guy Walter Ong. And it's so it turns out that this book is like a survey of pre-literate cultures, right? And the assumption would be that, I mean, and I think this is a sort of a common-ish apologetic answer, which is that, yeah, but pre-literacy, it was really important to practice the tradition and like really memorize it and learn it and then pass it on, because accuracy is really important, because there's no way to verify or check anything. And so, children, adults, like a gospel, something like a story like the gospel was like rehearsed and practiced, and then it was passed down, and it was like it turns out that the opposite is the truth. Factual accuracy, I mean, again, I'm just parroting something I read once, right? So, take anything I say here with a grain of salt. But according to this book, it turns out that pre-literate cultures, that the emphasis really wasn't on factual accuracy or getting the details right and memorization. The emphasis was on the message. It was on the bottom line. It was on the spirit of like the kind of moral of the story. I mean, people didn't, and it does make sense if you think about it. Like, nobody's going to come and fact check you anyway. What matters is the message you take away from it. And so, yeah, there, historical, factual, accurate, that wasn't like a thing. So from my understanding, I mean, that's why, that's why I'm not too worried about stuff like that. I mean, the Gospels are the Gospels. Obviously, they come from a tradition that that Paul talks about. Yeah, I'm not. I'm no longer scratching my head, going, "Well, is it accurate or not?" It may not matter.
I actually agree with you 100%.
Oh wow! Oh cool.
Yeah. So
Nice.
I just wanted to hear what you had thought about the actual the apologetic of, well, it was an oral society. They had great memories because they memorized stuff and all this, which I'm sure there's a lot of truth there.
Must be some truth to
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, but I agree completely with you. It wasn't even looking at, so if you would classify the Gospels as ancient biographies, which they're not technically in the same format as ancient biographies.
Yeah.
But even if it was, they weren't. It wasn't about chronological order. It wasn't about every single little detail and everything about it. It was about the who and the what, the message that was trying to be. Because a lot of Christians don't even know that, like, until I got into studying scripture, and this is from theist and conservative theist scholars like Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount. That wasn't an event. It's several different events that Matthew had put together to make Jesus look like Moses. He was trying to bring that parallel because he gave the law from the mountain and all of this. And it's not to get too technical, but they call it pericope. There's like clustering of messages and stuff. And when I started learning all that, I was like, here I am learning, like, wait a minute, I thought every single word and everything had to be true and it was passed on accurately.
Yeah.
And then so I started because it's all four of the Gospels have a theological message.
Right,
they're
right.
trying to portray something. So yeah, that was I just kind of want to get your idea of for somebody who spends a lot of time memorizing
Ha,
how you
yeah.
felt about it. So
Cool. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I can hear my
okay,
wife and kid.
rock on.
They just came home, but
Yeah.
no rush. But
Yeah, 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 definitely, man. I am so honored and thrilled that you came and hung out with me, and man, I would love to have you back anytime to BS and shoot the stuff, man. It's
you got it, man.
yeah.
Anytime. I really have appreciated this conversation, and I'm truly complimented by you having invited me on to have the conversation. So
Oh, absolutely,
you're a
man. So
prince. Thank you.
thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Everybody, thank you for hanging out. This was last minute. I am going to put your YouTube channel link and stuff in there. I'm just
Cool.
trying to get the stream going first.
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally.
yeah, but I'll get all that in there. Thank you everybody for hanging out last minute, Scott. Man, it's been great. And you go take care of the family, and I'll see them out of here.
All right, will
All right.
do. Take care, brother.
All right, thanks, man. Man, oh man, that was last minute, but he told me it was going to be last minute when he was able to come hang out. But I just super stoked and honored that he'd come hang out with us. So make sure you check out his YouTube channel, Theoretical Bullshit. It's actually pretty good. Don't let the name fool you. And everybody for midday coming and hanging out, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to get the Alex Malpass show rescheduled hopefully next week. And with that, you guys have a good rest of the day.